Washington is warning against Nippon Steel's takeover of US Steel, saying it would create national security risks. That's according to a letter sent to the companies and seen by Reuters. In the letter, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the US says decisions taken by the Japanese firm could lead to a reduction in domestic steel capacity. It says that could hurt the supply of metals needed for critical transportation, construction and agriculture projects. The committee said Nippon might also oppose US tariffs on Chinese steel imports. One expert said it all marked a major expansion of the usual definition of a national security risk. Some also asked why a takeover by a firm from Japan, one of Washington's closest allies, should pose any danger. Even so, the letter provides a glimpse of the grounds the Biden administration is expected to use to block the deal, which has run into rising bipartisan opposition. Both Democrat presidential candidate Kamala Harris and Republican rival Donald Trump have said they are opposed. In a 100-page response seen by Reuters, Nippon pledged to invest billions of dollars into US steel facilities, which it says would otherwise be idled. The company also promised not to transfer any jobs or capacity outside the country. US Steel has previously said it would pursue all legal avenues to ensure that the takeover proceeds.
Donald Trump says he would tap Elon Musk to serve in his administration if he wins November's U.S. presidential election. Trump said Thursday he'd make good on Elon's offer to serve under him by putting him in charge of an efficiency task force.
I will create a government efficiency commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government and making recommendations for drastic reforms. We need to do it. Can't go on the way we are now. And Elon, because he's not very busy, has agreed to head that task force. Be interesting.
It was part of a wide-ranging speech where Trump laid out his economic vision. He also pledged to slash corporate tax rates for companies that manufacture domestically, establish low tax zones on federal lands to encourage construction companies to build new homes, and start a sovereign wealth fund. He says the commission would work to eliminate fraud and improper payments within 6 months, but did not provide details on how it would operate. Musk has already responded to Trump, saying on X that he's eager to serve America if given the chance, and that, quote, no pay, no title, no recognition is needed. The Tesla CEO mentioned in an August 19th podcast that he had discussed the commission with Trump and was interested in joining it. Sources told Reuters Trump has been discussing the Efficiency Commission idea with aides for weeks. American politicians have called for similar entities before. Republican President Ronald Reagan established the Grace Commission during his presidency. But Trump's proposal has already drawn fire from Everett Kelly, president of the American Federation of Government Employees, a union that represents 750,000 federal workers. He accuses Trump and Musk of wanting to gut the nonpartisan civil service and replace fired workers with allies.
France may finally have a new prime minister. French President Emmanuel Macron appointed Michel Barnier, the European Union's former Brexit negotiator, to the role on Thursday, hoping to end the country's political paralysis after an inconclusive snap election in June left his centrist coalition losing dozens of seats and no party winning an absolute majority. A string of potential prime ministers have been considered in recent weeks, but none mustered enough support to guarantee a stable government, which was Macron's key criteria. As the hunt dragged on, public finances deteriorated, and now time is running out to prepare France's 2025 budget. Barnier will quickly face this particular baptism of fire, and if parties in the bitterly divided parliament are not satisfied with the budget, a vote of no confidence could be triggered. At 73, Barnier will be the oldest prime minister in France's modern political history, taking over from Gabriel Attal, who was the youngest. A staunch pro-European and a moderate career politician, he first became a lawmaker aged 27. Barnier held roles in several French governments, including foreign minister and agricultural minister, but is best known abroad for having led the EU's talks with Britain over its exit from the bloc from 2016 to 2021. Leaders of the far-right National Rally, Parliament's biggest single party, signalled on Thursday that the party would not immediately block Barnier, but could do so later if their demands were not met. The left-wing alliance that won June's election accused Macron of ignoring the snap election result by picking a conservative. It called for demonstrations against Barnier's selection, but does not have enough seats to block the choice on its
Hunter
own.
Biden pleaded guilty to federal tax charges on Thursday. It's a surprise move by the son of President Joe Biden that avoids a potentially embarrassing trial weeks before the U.S. presidential election in November. Biden had been set to stand trial in a Los Angeles federal courthouse on criminal charges of failing to pay $1.4 million in taxes while spending lavishly on drugs, sex workers, and luxury items. Instead, he pleaded guilty to all 9 counts he faced. He now faces up to 17 years in prison and up to $450,000 in penalties. Earlier in the day, Biden had offered to plead guilty to the charges but avoid admitting wrongdoing, an unusual legal maneuver called an Alford plea. Prosecutors opposed that move. After a break, Biden's lawyer Abe Lowell told the judge that he would plead guilty, despite having no prior agreement with prosecutors that would ease his sentence. In a statement after the hearing, Biden said he pleaded guilty to spare his family from having to sit through a trial that would have aired messy details from a period in his life where he was suffering from drug addiction. He also said that he had paid back his taxes. Lowell told reporters afterward that Biden might appeal his sentence. Biden is currently appealing a guilty verdict in a separate case in Delaware for illegally buying a gun while using drugs. That conviction means he could face a stiffer sentence for the tax case if convicted, because he would be a repeat offender. The White House has said President Biden has ruled out pardoning his son. Hunter Biden's sentencing has been set for December 16th.
Georgia state officials arrested the father of 14-year-old suspected school shooter Colt Gray on Thursday, seen here in a police booking photo, who is accused of killing 4 people and injuring 9 more at a high school in the city of Winder on Wednesday. Now, authorities have charged 54-year-old father Colin Gray with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder and 8 counts of cruelty to children. That's according to Chris Hosey, director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
These charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
Officials also say that Colt Gray has been charged with 4 counts of felony murder and would be tried as an adult. The FBI said last year both Grays had been questioned by local officials about threats made online to carry out a school shooting, but there was no probable cause for their arrest. In that 2023 probe, Father Colin said that while he had hunting guns at home, his son did not have unsupervised access to them, and Colt denied making the threats online. County Sheriff Judd Smith said the younger Gray used an AR platform-style weapon, or semi-automatic rifle, to carry out the attack that killed 2 teachers and 2 14-year-old students. It remains unclear how the shooter obtained the weapon. The shooting in Winder marks the first mass shooting of this U.S. school year, only a few weeks since it began in many school districts. It has rattled a community of 18,000 and again revived both a national debate about gun control and the outpouring of grief that follows in a country where attacks like this occur with some regularity. Colt Gray is currently in custody without bond and has a scheduled arraignment for Friday. The incident echoes a recent case in Michigan where parents were held responsible for their child's 2021 school shooting. It's believed to be the first instance in the US where parents were held legally responsible for their children's actions in such tragedies.
Kamala Harris will become the first woman president of the United States.
Presidential elections forecaster Alan Lichtman, who has successfully predicted the outcome of 9 of the last 10 White House races, sees a Harris-Walz victory in November. The distinguished professor of history at American University uses an election model based on 13 true or false questions that ignore the views of political pundits and pollsters, which he calls the keys to the White House system.
Critically, we know Biden withdrew in favor of Harris. That cost the Democrats one key, the incumbency key. But the Democrats finally got smart and united behind Harris, which saved for them the internal party contest key.
But while Lichtman's model currently favors Harris to win over her Republican rival Donald Trump, wild cards remain.
Foreign policy, military policy keys are wild cards because wars are so fluid and so unpredictable. I can't predict what's going to happen in the world, and we have 2 fluid wars. But I've taken that into account in my call. Even if Harris lost both of my foreign military keys, failure and success, she still would be down only 5 keys, one short of the 6 keys that it takes to predict an incumbent party defeat.
Anybody who's about beating down other people is a coward.
Lichtman's prediction came just days before the first televised debate between Harris and Trump.
I think there's no question about it that the momentum is with Kamala Harris.
Political commentator Charlie Sykes.
And I think that both candidates are going to try to get under the skin of the others. I think that Trump is going to try to make Kamala angry or less joyful to interrupt her vibes. And of course, Kamala Harris is being urged to let Trump be Trump.
Most opinion polls show Harris to be slightly ahead nationally and in the majority of battleground states. But Trump remains well within striking distance to win the November 5th election. Director of Presidential Studies at Hofstra University, Mina Bowles.
We see that after the horrific assassination attempt. We see that at his Republican convention acceptance speech. Former President Trump really believes that this is that he has an important role to play in the future of American politics, and that he is the only one who can do this. And that message is compelling.
With many states leaning either solidly Republican or Democratic, only a handful of so-called battleground or swing states may decide the election.
This district in Budapest is holding a 2-week referendum on short-term rentals and whether they should be banned. It would be the first of its kind in one of Europe's most popular tourist destinations. District Mayor Thomas Soprini says the city's popularity has justified asking locals about their impact on housing affordability and quality of life.
You cannot sit idle and wait for something to just happen. More and more flats are becoming Airbnbs. It's true for all the districts.
Eurostat figures show almost 719 million guest nights spent in the European Union last year were booked via online platforms such as Airbnb, Expedia Group, Booking, and TripAdvisor. In Central Europe, Budapest was the most popular for short-term stays, with 6.7 million guest nights. That's ahead of cities like Vienna and Prague. Real estate website Ingatlin.com said a ban in the 6th district, where apartment prices are 22% above the Budapest average, could temporarily curb long-term rental prices. Locals were mixed on the proposal. Gaber Siklosi says Airbnbs should be regulated, put within limits, but not banned. While Mathilde, who didn't give her surname, says short-term visitors cause problems. But there are also worries about the effect on local businesses catering largely to foreign tourists. This owner of a ruin bar, popular with visitors, says local councils, lawmakers, and organizations should deal with the issue, but not go so far as a ban. Voting ends on September 15th, and if adopted, a ban would start from the beginning of 2026. The outcome could have wider implications, with Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government mulling regulation on short-term rentals, which the economy minister says contributes to a housing shortage and high prices.
We have the determination and a dream to continue the educational process for kindergarten and school children. Wherever I've been displaced, I set up an educational tent for the students so we can care for them. It pains us deeply to see Palestinian children becoming street vendors or just filling water gallons or collecting wood sticks. I try my best to provide simple facilities for the children. As you can see, it is just a basic educational tent. We need chairs and tables so the children can learn properly instead of being forced to write on the ground. The available facilities are quite basic, like notebooks and pens. Children had aspirations before the war on the Gaza Strip to become a doctor or an engineer. They had wishes and dreams. Children used to wake up, go to school normally. Children used to go to kindergarten and live their life normally without feeling afraid or insecure. Even though we have set up an educational tent here, we still need a sense of security because we're exposed to continuous bombing.
A plane carrying the first batch of Mpox vaccines landed in the Democratic Republic of Congo on Thursday. It's the epicenter of an outbreak that prompted the UN to declare a global public health emergency. A European Union official said the first delivery consists of 99,000 doses manufactured by Bavarian Nordic. They were donated by the EU. He said another delivery on Saturday will bring that total to 200,000 doses, with the aim of getting 566,000 of them to wherever needs are greatest in the region. A lack of Mpox vaccines in Africa has hampered efforts to stop the sometimes deadly disease. The delivery in Congo should start to address a huge inequity that left African countries with no access to the 2 shots used in a 2022 outbreak, while they were widely available in Europe and the US. Congolese Health Minister Samuel Roger Kamba Malamba says authorities will start planning who will get the vaccine and where, with the aim of prioritizing what he called hotspots. Congo has said it will launch its vaccination campaign on October 8th. That will give it time to carry out an awareness-raising campaign to overcome mistrust in some communities.
Ugandan Olympic marathon runner Rebecca Cheptegei died on Thursday, days after she was doused in petrol and set on fire by her boyfriend in Kenya. It is just the latest attack on female athletes in the country. Cheptegei is the third prominent sportswoman to be killed in Kenya since October 2021. Outside hospital in the Kenyan Rift Valley city of Eldoret, her heartbroken mother, Agnes Ndiema Cheptegei, paid tribute to her daughter.
She was a good child, very polite, and she didn't have a lot of issues. I just don't know.
Consultant Dr. Mbugiwa Kimani said the hospital had done all that we could for her.
She had a severe percentage of burns, which unfortunately led to multi-organ failure.
Cheptegei, who finished 44th in Paris, had a house in Kenya where she stayed while training in the country. Kenyan Sports Minister Kipchumba Murkomen described the 33-year-old's death as a loss to the entire region. It is, he added, a stark reminder that we must do more to combat gender-based violence in our society. Nearly 34% of Kenyan girls and women aged 15 to 49 have suffered physical violence, according to government data from 2022, with married women at particular risk. In October 2021, Olympian runner Agnes Tirop, a rising star in Kenya's highly competitive athletics scene, was found dead in her home in the town of Iten with multiple stab wounds to the neck. Ibrahim Rotich, her husband, was charged with her murder and has pleaded not guilty. That case is ongoing. Uganda's Minister of State for Sports said Kenyan authorities are investigating Cheptegei's killing.
A choppy day of trading on Wall Street Thursday led to a mixed performance for the major indexes. The Dow fell about 0.5%, while the S&P 500 dropped 0.3 and the Nasdaq gained 0.25%. Stocks were mostly higher earlier in the session after economic reports helped allay concerns of labor market deterioration. The focus shifted later in the day to Friday's key jobs report, which will likely set the stage for the Federal Reserve to begin cutting interest rates later this month. Brian Mulberry, client portfolio manager with Zacks Investment Management, explains how he thinks investors should position themselves at this point in the economic cycle.
What you really want to look for is not individual sectors necessarily, but individual names that have very good durable earning structures, and other subcategories like low levels of debt. That way, no matter what happens with interest rates, their capital structure is not as impacted as some others who've been financing their growth structures. And that's how you can simply avoid some of this immediate volatility. And we expect that volatility to probably last through the end of the year as we start to work out, what interest rates will actually do versus the expectation.
Stocks on the move included Tesla, which rose about 5% after it said it will launch its full self-driving advanced driver assistance software in the first quarter next year in Europe and China, pending regulatory approval. And shares of JetBlue Airways added 7% after the carrier raised its third quarter revenue forecast.
Volvo slashed its margin and revenue ambitions for the second time in a year on Thursday. It comes a day after the Swedish carmaker, which is majority owned by China's Geely, gave up on its electric vehicle-only target due to the impact of tariffs and lower demand for EVs. EU, US and Canadian tariffs on electric cars made in China have made market conditions increasingly difficult for automakers. Overall demand for EVs has also slowed, partly because of a lack of affordable cars. Volvo Cars lowered its targets for operating profit margin, excluding joint ventures and associates, to 7 to 8% from above 8%. It also scrapped a sales goal of up to $58.4 billion, instead saying it expected to outgrow the premium car market. Volvo walked back margin and revenue goals on another occasion earlier this year. In January, it gave up a target for annual sales of 1.2 million cars annually by mid-decade, which was first announced 3 years ago. Shares in Volvo Cars were up 3% early Thursday, having fallen sharply the previous day on news of the abandoned EV target. Qualcomm has explored the possibility of buying parts of Intel's chip design business, two sources exclusively told Reuters. The sources said the move comes as Intel looks to drop business units and sell off other assets. They said its client PC design business is of major interest to Qualcomm executives. The mobile chip maker has been working on plans to buy pieces of Intel for months, according to the sources. They added Qualcomm's interest and plans have not been finalised and could change. An Intel spokesperson said Qualcomm hadn't approached the chip giant about a potential acquisition and declined to comment on Intel's plans. Qualcomm refused to comment. The US tech firm is known for chips found in smartphones and counts Apple as a customer. Intel reported a terrible second quarter last month, which saw a 15% reduction in staff and a pause on paying dividends. Executives have grappled with how to continue to fund the company's manufacturing plans and generate cash. Its PC client business revenue dropped 8% to $29.3 billion last year, amid overall weakness in the PC market. Intel's board is due to meet next week to consider proposals from Chief Executive Pat Gelsinger on how to trim operations and save cash.
Chinese e-commerce retail giant Shein has divided opinion in South Africa after opening its first physical store. Not only has it lured in bargain hunters, but it spurred a tax change after rivals said the competition was unfair. Having opened in Johannesburg a month ago, it has attracted reams of customers like Michelle Naidu, who are eager for clothes and accessories, which often cost less than $10.
First kind of initial expectation from Shein was that it was not up to what my standard of good quality would be. First kind of initial expectation from Shein was that it was not up to what my standard of good quality would be. So I think when I started noticing that, hey, actually this is like every other piece of clothing in my cupboard, I was like, okay, maybe I should just rethink this and then give it a try.
But prices of Shein's online-only goods are expected to rise in South Africa. That's after the country's tax authority increased levies to protect local retailers. Since Monday, people importing low-value parcels have been required to pay value-added tax of 15%. Shein's critics said this move will help level the playing field. And while some shoppers are saying why not to Shein's bargain offers, advocates for sustainable fashion, like writer Afika Yardisveni, encouraged shoppers to question such cheap prices.
When things are produced locally,
they cost more because I think people are trying to do right in terms of labor laws and to give people a decent quality of life, which is not so much the case with with the suppliers who supply for the likes of Shein. There's still a big conversation there about the ethics around exploitation and just the churning culture that's happening there. So I think as a consumer, you also have to think to yourself, do I really need the sweater in 3 different colors?
Shares of JetBlue Airways rose as much as 9.5% Thursday morning after it raised its current quarter revenue forecast. The airline said it benefited from strong summer travel and demand from people trying to avoid a global cyber outage that had a major impact on other airlines. Bookings got a boost following the outage caused by a software update by cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike that led to thousands of delays and cancellations at Delta and other carriers. JetBlue said revenue could rise 1% in its third quarter, when it previously predicted a fall of 1.5% as its best-case scenario. An analyst from Citigroup called the update encouraging. JetBlue cited stronger bookings in Latin America, one of its major markets, and gains from previously announced cost cuts and cancellations of less profitable routes for the forecast raise. The efforts to improve its financial performance follow the termination of its proposed $3.8 billion merger with ultra-low-cost carrier Spirit Airlines in March.
Japanese retail giant Seven & i Holdings has rejected a $38.5 billion takeover offer from Canadian retailer Alimentation Couche-Tard. The 7-Eleven operator said Friday the deal would not be in the best interests of shareholders. It also predicted the takeover would face antitrust challenges in the US, where the combined company would control almost 20% of the convenience store market. Couche-Tard owns the Circle K brand of small stores there. 7 & I said it was ready to sincerely consider any proposal, but said the current offer didn't stack up. It added that even a significantly increased bid would fail to address the regulatory problems. 2 years ago, grocery chain Kroger had to abandon a takeover of smaller rival Albertsons over similar antitrust concerns. There was no immediate response from Couche-Tard to the rejection. Earlier in the week, incoming Chief Executive Alex Miller had said he was confident the company had the ability to complete the deal. 7 & I shares were down over 1% by early afternoon in Tokyo following news of the rejected bid. One analyst told Reuters that the current offer was really just the opening salvo, while another said there was no way Couche-Tard would be able to offer a price that 7 & I would consider fair. Even if the deal went through at the current price, it would be the largest ever foreign buyout of a Japanese firm. It would far eclipse the $18 billion paid by a private equity consortium in 2018 to buy Toshiba's memory chip business.
Ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. And because we ripped up the agreement, we know very well that that means that a question of an election is more likely. And we are ready for an election. Justin Trudeau has let Canadians down. And Canadians are done with his endless disappointment and delay. Trudeau's Liberals can't deliver change. They are too weak and too selfish to stop Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. The next election is going to be about a choice between Pierre Poilievre or New Democrats who want to save you money, save you when it comes to buying your groceries and your rent. That's a choice in the next election.
My message to the world is that just as you provided us with vaccination so that our children would be safe, you must provide us with a ceasefire and a stop to this war, as this war is the real catastrophe for us.